get it going right here, right now. This is Diamond Conversations, and you are listening to episode 1, the inaugural episode of Diamond Conversations here on the Place to Be Nation. If you didn't know by now, by the title, my name is Chad, and every single week I'm going to bring to you an interview focused on the wonderful America's pastime, the beautiful game of baseball that I love so dearly and have been working so hard to bring this Diamond Conversations project to life over the last couple of months. And I'm so excited for this first episode to welcome in former San Diego Padres #1 pick, Matt Antonelli, joining me for an awesome chat where we talk about everything from Matt Antonelli's first at-bat in the major leagues facing Greg Maddux to his training school that he's got in Massachusetts and everything in between. But before we get into that interview, I just wanted to introduce myself. My name is Chad. If you've heard my voice before, I am a part of the Two-Man Power Trip of Wrestling podcast, and now it's recently expanded into a greater network where we've got multiple shows under our umbrella, including the Triple Threat podcast with the franchise Shane Douglas, the J.J. Dillon podcast featuring WWE Hall of Famer J.J. Dillon, and ECW manager and valet Francine and her show Eyes Up Here. But kind of expanding out here and working on this baseball project, and just absolutely thrilled to be a part of the Place to Be Nation. Just a little trivia about myself. Years and years ago, while commuting from New Jersey to Washington, D.C. for a job that I'd end up taking and having a very, very hearty career with, the Place to Be Nation got me through a lot of that, and it's very cool to kind of come full circle and bring some content to the Place to Be Nation platform. Because way back when, I was just sitting on the other side of those earbuds listening to the content that was being produced at the time. And to say it helped inspire some of my motives, I would be lying if I said that wasn't a absolute influence. But the Place to Be Nation was, and I'm so happy to be here today and bring to you as much as we can some enjoyment by learning something about the game of baseball and the personalities and the people that help make this game come to life. The goal for this show is to not only have players on, but also authors and announcers and commentators and people who have helped create really cool baseball content, whether it's some sort of video content or whether it is some sort of series. If they had an influence of some sort in the game, they are going to be on Diamond Conversations. So far, the response from the back end side of things has been unbelievable. People who are willing to come on the show, people who are trying to make time to come on the show, not necessarily looking for Hall of Famers every single week, but you know what? Wanting to get the interesting and the kind of captivating baseball stories out there. And this week, we start with Matt Antonelli of Antonelli Baseball, and just so excited to be really hearing the music hit while this episode gets off and running. So again, thank you very much for taking the time to listen to my voice. Thank you very much for taking the time to listen to Diamond Conversations. If you want to reach out and touch me, you can hit me up on Twitter at WrestlinPal. That's RASSLINPAL at WrestlinPal on Twitter. Look forward to hearing from you. Look forward to being part of the Place to Be Nation. And that's enough out of me. Let's get out of the bullpen. Let's head onto the field. Let's take the mound. Let's throw one right down the middle and get on the road here. The inaugural episode of Diamond Conversation. Let's casually get into this, and joining me on the line today is a former Major League Baseball player on the initial episode here of Diamond Conversations. I've become addicted to his YouTube channel of Antonelli Baseball and is very, very happy that I welcome in for this first episode of Diamond Conversations, the one and only Matt Antonelli. Matt, thanks for joining me today.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, YouTube, see, the whole point of this show is to get people that have this, like, social media presence. And what more can you have in terms of a presence than a daily YouTube channel where you just literally tell baseball stories from a perspective that I find to be some of the more fascinating things, and that's, like, the inner workings of, like, life of a ball player. And I got to say, right out the gate, we're going to start with that. How did you come around to doing the YouTube channel because, like I said, as somebody who like kind of, I don't live on YouTube, I got a life, but when I find stuff, I want to listen to things. What you're putting out there is exactly what I'm looking for.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. So it started basically as like an instructional, basically all instructional videos. So when I was playing, I was also in the off season coaching. So my dad is a high school baseball coach, travel baseball coach. And so I was helping him out. And I knew I wanted to get into coaching one day. And so I just started filming probably like once a week or a couple times a month, just instructional videos, teaching kids how to field, how to hit, how to throw. And I did that for the first literally probably like 6 or 7 years. And then someone asked me a question. I think it was, what type of gear do you get in the major leagues? And so I threw a video up there, just answered it for about 10, 15 minutes, threw it up there. And the next day I woke up and I had more views probably in that one video than I had over the last like 7 years of doing instruction videos. And so I was like, geez, apparently people want to hear this stuff. So I slowly started just answering more and more questions. And the channel has just kind of, I still stay with a lot of instructional stuff, but it's also taken a turn towards more of, the inner workings of the major leagues and just my experiences during my career.
It's so cool. And there's so many little ins and outs. And even today, as I was sitting here waiting for you, I was checking out your new video talking about the swine flu epidemic of, I'm going to guess around 2009, because that's when I remember the swine flu being a thing. And it was pretty brutal. But just those little ins and outs. Talking about getting the call to go to the major leagues. What do you do with a signing bonus when you're signed to a major league team? How you kind of get put on the phantom DL. These little things that you hear about from reading stories, or you hear things in passing from other interviews. This, you sit down in front of that camera, you give about 10, 15 minutes of stories. And I'm telling you, I find it compelling because this is exactly what I want to hear. Having been around minor league baseball in a very, very small way, 15 years ago, and seeing what those guys were like coming in and always wondering like, what? I was there when Cole Hamels got signed to the Phillies. I was at the first stop that he had on his minor league journey before he became, the superstar that he became. And he was like 19 years old, just signing this huge deal, being dropped in Lakewood, New Jersey, not really the most glamorous place in the world. But watching your videos and listening to what you say, I kind of get an understanding of what it's like to live that life. And is that what your goal was when you started doing the more informational videos?
Yeah, exactly. For me personally, and I had played baseball my whole life, but I knew nothing about professional baseball until I got drafted and went there. And a lot of my stories actually are, when I showed up, I had this idea of what professional baseball was going to be, and it was completely different. And so I'm assuming if I'm in baseball as much as I was, and I had no idea what it was going to be like, that people that don't play baseball or just, have never had the opportunity to be around professional baseball, they definitely have no idea. And I'd say most people think it's one thing, and it's almost the exact opposite. And so I think I learned after throwing up a few videos that people enjoyed this and people were curious of what was going on. And so, I just started throwing out more and more videos, and the response has been great.
I would kind of what I would do is I work directly with the roving instructors and the coaches, and I would be filming things all over the stadium. But I would just kind of sit myself there and fuss through stuff and kind of fiddle through things just to kind of get, that vibe around what was going on. Because, at that time I was only, 20, 21 myself. So I could be dropped right in there if I had the skills, which I did not. That's why I stopped playing a long time ago. But I would just watch everybody and observe things, and I would listen to how, the guys would get the instruction from the coaches and what they would do on the field to make adjustments. And to see how you went from doing instructional videos to these things, I think that what you're doing with this helps people who discover these videos, and who knows what baseball players are finding these and taking little things out of your videos, and maybe at times in their career where they can use some of this enlightenment. I got to say, it's really it's something that really caught my attention. I think you're doing an amazing job.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
So where do you think you go with the rest of your story? Because you've shared so much. Is there anything that do you still come up with stuff on a daily basis, or do you have a routine of what you want to talk about in advance?
So I think when I first started, I made a list of a lot of the things that I thought people would find interesting. And I've made, at this point, I think I'm almost up to 2,000 videos. And that's a combination of instructional stuff and then also stories. And so at this point, I think I've probably covered every story that I can remember. But it's funny how a lot of times people will bring, they'll say something or ask a question, and then a story will pop into my head that I had totally forgot about. And so at this point, I pretty much just go by what people are asking. So in the comment sections of every video, I get tons and tons of questions. A lot of them I've already answered before, but a lot of them are really new questions and stories pop into my head that I just, that so many things have happened over my 8-year career. It's hard to remember all of them. And so now I just kind of, I get an idea. Someone pops something into my head. I throw the video out. And I've also tried new things. I'm continuing to do the instructional videos. Probably about 2-3 weeks ago, I started videotaping myself playing MLB The Show. And
yes.
I never played that before. And one of the kids on actually my summer ball team that I coach said, "Coach, why don't you videotape yourself and throw it up there?" And I was like, "No one's going to watch that. What are you talking about? That's a silly idea." And they kept telling me to do it. So I finally threw one up, and I think I threw it up there, and the next day I think I had 40,000 views on it, and people were like, "You got to make more of these." So I was like, "No, that wasn't too hard. It was fun playing the game." So I started to add that, but really new ideas come up every day, and I don't really even know where the channel is going to go. It's not like I sit down. I mean, my main job is to coach and run Antonelli Baseball, which is our baseball organization, and so YouTube's kind of just the fun thing for me. And I don't even really sit down and think about, okay, where are we going to take this channel? I just go with the flow, and more ideas come in from people, and I just make the videos.
Yeah, that's great. And we will talk about Antonelli Baseball here in a minute, because as I kind of explored your background a little bit more, and I got to know you through the videos, and I got to be honest, I was kind of sifting through some baseball cards to see if I was coming across that Matt Antonelli rookie card from back in the day. But I got to say, you did end up making it to the show, so to speak. You made it to the major leagues. You even hit a home run, which you detailed in another one of your videos. But do you miss that minor league life? Because, again, I'm fascinated by the minor leagues just because it reminds me of, my world of professional wrestling, because those are the guys that are out there grinding every day, and they're grinding to their next match, they're grinding to the next show. And that's what the minor leagues reminds me of. Do you miss that grind at all?
Well, I think I miss being around a lot of my buddies that I was with for a long time. You form a lot of really good relationships with people, and I played 8 years. And, now a lot of the players that I had got to know, I'm in Massachusetts. There's not a ton of baseball players, especially professional players from Massachusetts. So a lot of my buddies are kind of scattered all around the country. I don't see them a whole lot anymore. So I do miss that. And I miss playing. I love baseball. I know I'll be in baseball for the rest of my life. So obviously I can't play anymore. Now I'm coaching. So I really do enjoy that. And a lot of the relationships that I don't have with some of my buddies that I played with, now I'm coaching guys from, I'm coaching young players, but I'm also coaching and working with high school, college, and professional players. And so I still have the relationship part of it going, but I definitely miss playing. I don't miss 12-hour bus rides and eating McDonald's 7 days a week. But I do miss just being around the guys and being in the clubhouse, and then just playing the game. I'm a really big competitor, and so being able to get on the field and play is something I definitely do miss. But I've been able to supplement that with my coaching and the development of the younger guys.
Now that's very cool. So when you get a guy who's coming in, and you see, do you have like an application process? Do you have like a recruitment process that you go through? Like, how does somebody get involved with working with you on a one-on-one level?
Sure. So we have with Antonelli Baseball, we have teams. We have about 165 kids that are in our program, and basically, if you want to get into it, you have to try out. We have a tryout every basically the end of July, beginning of August. You come in, you try out. I would say probably this year we probably had 400 and something kids try out. About 160 or so, 165 make it. And so those guys are going to be with us pretty much throughout the year. But then I also work with players through lessons, and we have camps and clinics and all that stuff. So not everything's a tryout. There's plenty of people that just want to work with me one-on-one or in a small group that just, they shoot me an email, they give me a call, and we set up a time and do that. But I would say the majority of the stuff I do is with our players that are pretty much with us the entire year. We do a fall series, and we do a winter training, and then we get into the season in the spring and summer.
So what's the most important thing that you look for when you're looking for somebody to join one of your teams?
Sure. I think, I think the important part, and we do obviously look for the baseball part of it. Do we think the player can compete at that level and be successful? And obviously, our goals are development. We want to get the players better and get them to be able to improve and continue to move up the baseball ladder. But we also want to win. So that's also a part of it. But honestly, doing this now we've been doing it for about 6 years. I think the first thing is the type of kid that they are. Do they love baseball? Do they want to work really hard? Are they really into it? Like, those are the type of players we want to have around. Just because I think that first off, it makes our job a lot easier when we're dealing with people
Right.
that are like us. They want to play baseball. They want to learn. But then also it rubs off on the kids. It creates a really, really good atmosphere. And we're able to build a really nice culture with the program. So that's the biggest thing. Like, we don't want players that are just doing it because mom and dad said, we want you to go play baseball. And if they're not really into it, we've had a couple of those kids, and we, after a while we say, you know what, I think it's better that you go and do whatever else it is that you want to do, because I don't think baseball is really your passion. And so we've been able to get great kids into the program. And then once we do that, like, I'm pretty confident with our coaching staff that we can help develop their baseball skills. So if we get the right person, the right type of attitude in the building, then the baseball skills kind of take care of themselves, and we're able to improve those.
Now, are you an analytics guy? Do you follow the metrics and the trends and the exit velocities and the speed of all that stuff? Because that's what I see is, like, there's a disconnect, or there's a divide in between, quote, old school, baseball purists, and then the new school, analytics, the digital, the scouting teams that have really, like, they study this stuff. And I was watching the MLB Network yesterday, and, like, some of the stuff, and not that it goes over my head, I just am more of the good pitcher beats good hitter beats good pitcher kind of thing. But are you, like, more on the fence, or do you lean one way or the other?
Yeah, so I would say I'm a combo of both. I think for most things, I'm kind of in the middle. I think sometimes people are like, black or white. They've got to be way over here, or they got to be way over here. And I just feel like there's something to be said for the more old school coach that's able to, watch a player and be able to detect things with their eyes and their experience. I think there's definitely something to be said for that. But I also do think that with all the technology, especially over the last 5 to 10 years, when I was playing, there was none of this technology. And I think it's a good thing. And I think it definitely helps. And we use a lot of it with our players. And so we use things like bat sensors, and we use things like Rapsodo and these different type of things that can tell you, where's a player hitting it? How hard are they hitting it? We're able to use that stuff to help players also. But I think it's a combination of both. I think if you can only use one or the other, then I just don't think, I think there's got to be a marriage between everything, and you're able to piece everything together. And that's at least the way we've done it so far. And there's a lot of technology out there, and we're not able, like, big league teams now are spending lots and lots of money to help develop players through technology. And obviously with our program, like, we don't have $1 million budgets where we can use everything, but we're able to find things that, technology wise, we're able to use. And I think that they work really well. And we're always experimenting with new stuff. So I think it's a blend to keep it simple. I think it's blending both together and using, whatever we can use to make our players better. That's what we want to do. And that's what I want to do. So that's kind of where we're at right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's so cool how it's evolved. I mean, because obviously, the digital world we live in, and the analytic world that we have, with people who they're into everything you could possibly imagine stat-wise. But I recall, what I used to do is I used to literally have a camcorder, like literal small DV tape camcorder up to my eye. And I was sitting on the right field side. I was sitting on the left field side. I was in center field catching arm angles. That was all we did in 2004, 2005. There wasn't this insane, amount of stuff that I look at the major leagues now, and I see when I'm watching, I'm a Mets fan. So I'm watching the Met game, and you see matchups, and you see how guys they're so keyed into certain things. Has the analytics thing, do you think it's helped the overall game, or do you think people rely way too much on the numbers when there are times you should just be looking at the actual matchups one-on-one?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think, when I look at the teams that are kind of the last couple of years, last 5 years, maybe a little bit longer than that, the teams that are being really successful right now at the big league level, I think those are teams that are doing both. I think that, and they probably get a lot of headlines that they're moving more towards the numbers and the technology and all of that stuff. You see the Astros and the Dodgers and a lot of those teams that have been really, really successful. I think they're obviously doing a great job, and I don't know exactly what they're doing. I mean, a lot of this stuff, I'm not privileged enough to be around and see exactly what they're doing, just because I'm not part of a major league organization. But I have done enough research and read up on things that I do know they're doing things that were not done 10, 15, 20 years ago. And I think it is no doubt helping. At the same time, I don't think that they're 100% doing that, and they've gone away from, baseball's been around for a long time. and there's a lot of people in front offices and scouts and a lot of people within organizations that can bring a lot to the table outside of just numbers stuff and just technology stuff. So I think they're doing a good job of blending both together again. And it's just really interesting. I think baseball is on a path right now where it's going to continue to rely more and more and more on this type of technology stuff and these numbers things. And I'm interested to see where things go in the next 5 to 10 years, because I think there's a lot of work being done, especially behind the scenes, that we don't even know that's going on. And so it'll be interesting to see what happens and how teams continue to implement this stuff.
I asked that as a Met fan only because I sit here and scratch my head as to why they continually bring in their closer, Edwin Diaz, into games where they are clinging to that 1 or 2 run lead. So that's the reason I asked. There must be something that the average Joe isn't seeing that's going on behind the scenes. That's just my little funny fan aside there, because I'm still sitting here scratching my head for the last week. But I digress. So in your career, you've been in the Nationals organization, the San Diego Padres organization, the New York Yankees organization, and I believe the Baltimore Orioles organization. Did you see anything different between the different, organizations? That obviously the Yankees, they're at a certain tier in terms of their overall, makeup and their payroll and on their major league squad and this and that. But did you see the different organizations run, a little differently, or do they parallel in some way?
Yeah, I think for the most part, a lot of the organizations were pretty similar. Now, I spent most of my career with the Padres. I was with them for 5 years. And then I played for 4 different organizations, but that was all within basically 2.5 to 3 years. So I only spent 1 year with the Nationals. I spent 3 months with the Orioles. I spent 3 months with the Yankees. And then I spent about 3 months with the Indians. So I wasn't around those organizations probably enough to see some of the really big differences.
Right.
The other difference was when I was with the Padres, I was their guy. I was drafted by them. I was their first round pick. And so I probably saw things a little differently from that perspective versus when I went to the Nationals and to those other teams. For the National, I just signed as a minor league free agent. And so I was and that was the first organization I went to after the Padres. So I came from being like this top prospect, played in the major leagues, thought I was going to have a long career, to going to the Nationals where they sent me to minor league spring training. And I kind of went from the top of the prospect list to maybe not the bottom, but just kind of thrown in with a bunch of other guys. And so I did see things differently there. But again, I don't know if that was so much that the organizations were different or just my kind of where I was on the ladder of prospects on that totem pole changed so much that I saw things that, if I was with the Padres and I just came in as like a low draft pick, I probably would have seen very similar things. But a lot of my time, unfortunately, and I've said this in my videos, when you go through the minor leagues, I went through really, really quickly. I made it to the major leagues within basically like 2 years of getting drafted, which in baseball terms is really, really quick.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so I saw things from that perspective. Like I got to the big leagues quick, and the minor leagues aren't bad until you go to the major leagues and then have to go back down to the minor leagues. And then you're like, oh man, like I want to go back to the big leagues because it's a lot better up there. And so I think that's what happened also is when I went back to the minor leagues and I basically played in the minor leagues from 2000. Let's see, I made my debut in 2008. In 2010, I was technically on the big league team, but I was injured the whole year. And then after 2010, I went back to the minors and never came back up again. So those last 3-4 years of my career, I was back in the minor leagues and probably not enjoying myself as much as I should have.
So let's talk about when you made it up to the show and you made it to the San Diego Padres major league team. Now, obviously, you've been around the guys in spring training, so not that you're getting acclimated to them, but you get to be around them. Who's the first guy you meet when you get to the first day on your very first trip to the major leagues?
So the very first person, that's a good question, actually. When I first got to the clubhouse, we were playing in LA. I flew in. I was up in AAA. I got called up, so I flew down to LA. I think I walked in. I think I went right to the manager's office. Buddy Black was our manager. he told me I was playing that day. I wasn't expecting to play. I thought I was just flying in. I came in super early. I was exhausted. I just figured I was going to just watch a game that night. He was like, "You're starting at second base. You're facing Greg Maddux. He's on the mound." And I was like, "All right, let's do this." So he was the first person I talked to. We had some great veteran players on that team. I think Trevor Hoffman was our closer, and I talked to him a couple of times, and he might be the nicest person maybe on the face of the earth. He was just great at basically making you feel like you were part of the team, and he made you really feel at home, even though I was only a 22-year-old kid, 23-year-old kid. And so he was really great. Adrian Gonzalez was another one of the leaders on the team, although he was a little bit less vocal. Just like a super, super nice guy. So I was really fortunate. I played on a team where the veteran players were very approachable, great people. So the atmosphere, the clubhouse atmosphere was fantastic. And we were in last place at the time, unfortunately. And sometimes when you're having seasons like that, sometimes the clubhouse isn't that way. And so I think it was a nice way for me to kind of make my debut with that type of clubhouse. And so all those guys were really, really helpful. And then I went out there and I had my first game that night, and was lucky enough. I hit my first at bat against Maddux, and then I think I went like 0 for 23.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. So I got a hit, then didn't get one for a while, but it was definitely a great experience, and I wish I could have had a little bit more time up there.
You get a hit off Greg Maddux, your first at bat there. You're sitting on first base saying, "I got about 3,000 of these left in the bat." Right? You think that you could conquer the world after that?
Without a doubt. I thought I was going to play. I thought I was going to play for 10 years. I was thinking I'm so young, and this ain't that hard. This ain't hard. This is pretty easy to get a hit. And then, like I said, I think I went 0 for my next 23 or something like that. And so I went from thinking I was the greatest player in the world to thinking I was the worst player in the world in about a week's time.
So how do you kind of manage that, being up there, you're fresh as a daisy, you got your first hit off the schneid, so you don't have to worry about that, but how do you kind of handle that? Do you press a little bit, do you put a little pressure on yourself, or do you try not to do that because you don't want to be shipped right back down to AAA if you're doing it?
Yeah, so my story is a little interesting because, I had been a kind of a top prospect. I think I was number 2 prospect with the Padres. I think Chase Headley was number 1 when we both got called up. And so I was high on the prospect list, but I also, that year in AAA, right before I got called up, I did not hit well. And it was the first time in my life that I didn't hit well. And so it was a year that I struggled, and I did not think I was going to get called up to the big leagues at that time because I was not hitting well. And I kind of got things going towards the last month of the year in AAA, and that's when I got called up. And so when I got called up there, they actually talked to me. The hitting coach was Wally Joyner at the time. And he said, I know this year hasn't been great for you. He said, but we're going to work on some things. We want to get you ready, basically not for right now, because it was late in the year, it was September. He said, we want to get you ready for next year. So my time in the big leagues we were working on a lot of things. I changed up a lot. So they gave me kind of a new stance, a new stride. We worked on kind of like a bigger stride, a leg kick. And so I was trying to play and learn kind of a new swing at the same time. And so I knew I was going to struggle. And they told me, they said, don't worry about your stats right now. You may struggle, but again, let's get ready for next year. And so I think I hit like 200 at the big leagues that month. I hit like 198 or something like that. And so I did struggle, and it was tough. I was not happy about it. It's never fun to struggle. Never mind when you're in the major leagues for your first time. Everything you do gets put on television. A lot of people are calling you out. What's going on, man? What, you were hitting so well, and why are you struggling? So that's definitely tough. But I had faith that the organization was doing the right thing, and they were trying to get me prepared to hopefully have a long career. And it didn't work out that way. But I gave it my best shot, and I did what they were asking me to do to the best of my ability. And that's just kind of the way it goes, I guess.
Hey, you're in an elite club. That's what you can say of guys that did cross the line there, and you stepped onto the field. So there's a lot you can hang your hat on, sure. Even if it was So were you a September call up?
Yeah, so I was called up in September, and then that following year, I went back down to AAA. Got banged up in spring training a little bit, And then in 2010, I got hurt again. I broke my hand and I had wrist surgery. So technically I was on the big league team in 2010, but I never played one game. I was out the whole time. So really my only experience playing in the major leagues was that September. I got like 50, 55 at bats or something like that. And then I never could get back up again healthy enough and playing well enough to get more at bats.
And another great video of yours is talking about being on the, technically the major league roster and getting that major league roster pay versus being back down there, on the minor league grind. But, the one thing I asked that question for is, do you like this new thing that's happening next year where the September call-ups are done? They're not going to the 40-man for the September. I think it's 28 that they're going to stick to. Do you think that kind of hurts with getting people some playing time, or do you think it makes the game a little bit better? Because, watching the game last night, each manager's basically situationally pitching to each batter once you get past the seventh inning. So do you think that kind of hurts the development of a player if they're taking that away?
Yeah, I see it kind of in two ways. For one, I do think it is. Well, let's say this. When I was a September call-up, we played the Dodgers a lot down the stretch. The Dodgers were in first place. We were in last place. They were battling for the playoffs. And, when they played us, they played a lot of September call-ups. So, it's like at the time, it was like Manny Ramirez and Greg Maddux and Clayton Kershaw. And so they've got their best players, and they're playing against me and, 5 or 6 other guys that are September call-ups that, didn't end up having long major league careers. And so, the biggest games of the year in September, I don't know. It just didn't feel right that a playoff team that's battling with other teams, they're going to play some teams that aren't even major league. They're not even going to have major league players on it. So I do think that was, I don't know. It just felt weird. At the same time, I would have never probably gotten an opportunity to play in the big leagues if it wasn't for September call-ups. And I do think that there is something to be said for allowing a player to go up and see what they have, see if they have what it takes to make it. And I'm sure there's plenty of players that get called up and maybe the organization says, we're not so sure about this guy, but he gets up in September and he lights the world on fire. And they say, this is the dude right here. This is somebody that's going to be with us and has a chance. So next year he starts up there. And if it wasn't maybe for that September call up, maybe he doesn't get the same opportunity. So I do think it'll probably hurt a couple players not having the opportunity to go up, get some experience and show what they can do. But like I said, at the same time, I do think down the stretch of a season, it should be each team's best players. And I just think that makes probably for some more exciting baseball.
Yeah, I mean, from a fan perspective with the September call-up, the thing I always loved about it is, around the end of July, and obviously, too, they altered the trade deadline and how you go about that. The waiver deals are no longer going to be a thing as of this year. So the thing I found interesting as a fan was that you'd be looking down the pipeline and that towards the end of July being like, all right, well, who's going to get the call? Because if you are in a pennant race or you're a fringe pennant team, you never know who's going to help you. You could have a guy who comes up, lights the world on fire, and he's ended up starting in game 1 of the division series. So that's the one thing that I'm kind of going to miss about the September call-ups, even though there'll be a couple, but shortening from 40 to 28, I mean, that's a giant drop in players.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And I do think that is, especially not only for teams that are in the pennant race, but maybe if your team's out of it, you have no chance. Well, at least now in September, you can look forward to maybe seeing some of your prospects and saying, what do we have for next year? Versus maybe just tuning out and being like, well, we're out of it. And what do I need? I've watched these guys for 5 months and we're terrible. So I'm not watching baseball the last month. So I do think, from a fan perspective, it is also a little bit exciting when you get to see some of your top guys hopefully come up and show what they can do. So you make a good point.
Yeah, and that's what happened with the Mets last year. Is in September they were one of the best teams in the last month. I mean, I think they won 17 or 18 games in September. Virtually out of it, just fighting to see how close they could get to 500, which they still fell like 6 or 7 short. But you got to see guys that ended up being contributors this year. That obviously they had a really bad middle of the season, but you still see them now. They're all contributing, and that's it's a lost thing. But again, this guy, I'm more the purist, so I'm going to miss something as simple as the expanded rosters, without a doubt. But as we kind of get into the wrap up here, and I'll use the cliche, we're rounding third base, we're heading home to get to the finish, and you're getting the green light. But before we get into the final plugs here for Antonelli Baseball and everything that you got going on, just a couple little questions here. These are kind of the easy ones. What was your favorite ballpark that you visited while you were on the major league roster?
Dodger Stadium was probably my favorite, probably because I made my debut there. But noticeably the atmosphere there was just different than the other stadiums. Now, fans kind of get there late, and sometimes they leave early. But in the games that we were playing, they were in first place. It was they were going down the stretch trying to win a pennant, and they also had a great team. So they had, like I said, Manny Ramirez had just been kind of traded over to them, and he was lighting the world on fire, and he was hitting a homer, it felt like, every game. So the atmosphere there was the best atmosphere I played in. When Manny hit a grand slam at Dodger Stadium, it was the loudest. It was the loudest, craziest experience I've ever had at a major league game. I was standing on second base, literally thinking this is unbelievable, and they had just hit a grand slam against us. But I would have to give it to Dodger Stadium, yeah.
Yeah, he was unbelievable when he got to L.A. How about the toughest pitcher that you ever faced?
Couple guys. I think in my big league time, probably Ubaldo Jimenez when he was with the Rockies. I think he finished second in the Cy Young that year. He was amazing. But maybe the best stuff I ever saw was Daniel Bard when he was with the Red Sox. I know his career was kind of up and down, but when he was on, I think I was career like 1 for 30 against him throughout my life. Wow. In the, we played each other in college and then in professional baseball. And Tim Lincecum had some of the best stuff I ever saw. He was probably the only pitcher I ever faced where when guys would come back to the dugout, they would say, we have no chance. And I didn't face a lot of guys like that, but people would come back basically like, guys, we should just pack it in today because we're not going to hit this back.
Hey, they didn't call him the Freak for nothing. You know, he was exactly. A lot of power and not the biggest package, but still, man, he could just he could blow up by us. All right, what's the best piece of advice that you ever received in your playing days?
Oh, that's a really, really good question. I think most of the advice revolved around trying, baseball is such a game of up and downs, and it will drive you absolutely crazy. I'm convinced that most players, when they're done playing baseball, it's from the mental part of it, not so much the physical, because it's such a game of failure. And so I think most of the advice that you get is just trying to give you a way of getting through some of the ups and downs and not being on like the roller coaster ride, and focusing really on things that like you can control, not your batting average, there's so many things in baseball that you can't control, but literally just one at bat at a time, trying to get a good pitch, trying to hit the ball hard, trying to keep it as simple as possible. I think that's probably the best advice I got to get me, through which were really hard times at points in my career.
When you signed with the Yankees, was it reluctant on any to tell the people from Massachusetts, of your family and friends, that you were now putting on the evil Empire uniform?
No, not at all. So I was a huge Red Sox fan growing up, but the weirdest thing is probably in my second professional season, I was no longer a Red Sox fan, just because when you're playing, you can't watch. So I couldn't play and watch the Red Sox at the same time. So within a year or two, I kind of just lost. I didn't follow them anymore. And so right now, I don't even watch Red Sox. I mean, I watch it just to watch baseball, but I could care less if they win or lose, which is really strange. A lot of people around here think I'm an idiot. So when I got signed by the Yankees, I could care less about what team it was. I just wanted to play and have a chance to get to the big league. So I did not care.
That's exactly what I was thinking you were going to say. I just wanted to throw it out there. Those are test questions. I'm glad they worked out well. But before we let you go, please tell us what's going on in the world of Antonelli baseball, where the people can find you and listen to what you got going on with the YouTube channel, as well as any kind of, anything else you got going on in your world there, Antonelli baseball. Yeah, sure. So I think if you're a player or someone in our area that's interested in playing, or maybe interested in working with me, whether it's at our facility or just online, go to AntonelliBaseball.com. But if you're a social media type person, the two biggest social media platforms I'm on is Instagram. It's just Antonelli Baseball, and then on YouTube, if you just go on YouTube and type in Antonelli Baseball, couple thousand videos of ours are going to show up. And so I put up a YouTube video every single day. And again, it depends on the day. It could be instructional. It could be, talking about my career. It could be now MLB The Show, Road to the Show. And then on Instagram is mostly just instructional stuff, trying to help ball players, get to the next level. I love it. Now, I appreciate you coming on. I'm a little disappointed that you weren't wearing that sweet Antonelli baseball hat. I was kind of hoping you'd have that one. I could see what?
I always wear the hat, but I came down here and my hat for some reason is in my car, and I didn't want to hold you up, so I went. People usually don't ever see me. Look at my hair; it's getting terrible right now. People don't usually see me like this, but it's all good.
It's all good. That's why I got the hat on too. It's all about the image. So I appreciate you spending time with me today, Matt. And obviously, all the best. And we will stay tuned. I will be glued to the YouTube channel and waiting to see. Hopefully, no more swine flu. We got the bird flu. We got the pandemic. We got all the different things going on. Hopefully, that was the end of those.
I hope so. Well, thank you a lot. I appreciate you having me on here.